Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Robert Johansen. I'm the chair of the Australia-India Institute, and I'm delighted that you've been able to come to this event this evening. I hope a lot of you keep in touch with the events of the Institute. We have a broad range of events across a whole lot of different topics. So I encourage you to keep up to date with our events. Tonight is, we're looking forward to this very much. My only job is really to introduce the convener of this event, Dr. Rao, who will introduce the other members of the team and talk you through what we're doing tonight. So,
thanks, Robert.
Welcome.
Well, thanks very much, everyone, for coming along. It's a fantastic turnout, wonderful lecture theatre. Very pleased to have an esteemed panel of speakers to talk along tonight. I think the turnout is testimony to how much interest there is in a topic like meditation. There's a lot of things happening in the world. You pick up the newspaper and all we seem to see is a lot of doom and gloom. So that has to be balanced with positivity. And there's nothing more positive than the stillness and peace of mind that comes out of meditation. So I'd like to thank Professor Matu, Robert Johansen, for the opportunity. The Australia-India Institute has, over the years, been covering topics relating to economics, to politics, academic work, and really now we're starting to move into a slightly different field. Last year we held a seminar integrating India's holistic sciences with modern medicine. And there was such a good response from that, and a lot of people said we'd like to see more. So we're very happy and honoured to be here, Professor Matu, to start a health, culture and spirituality series. So meditation, India's gift to the West, is the first of those, and that'll be followed later in the year with one on India's martial arts, Kalari, and to finish the year, one on Indian food before the Christmas season arrives. So I'd like to introduce the panel. Professor Rob Moody from Melbourne University, Tammy Roos, author and meditation teacher, Suzanne Edwards, teacher of Transcendental Meditation, and Johnny Pollard, also meditation teacher, who's going to tell us all about the IT and technology applications for meditation, as well as lead a beautiful group meditation at the end. So bringing us to the topic of meditation, India's gift to the West. India's ancient scientists, we call them yogis and sages. Very similar to scientists of modern age who studied the natural physical sciences like biology, physics, chemistry, the ancient sages of old studied themselves and in deep introspection went within, quietened the mind and studied what was actually beneath the surface of the turbulent waves. There are countless great saints that have gone before us. To mention a few, Adi Shankara, Babaji, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, very ancient sages. And then over the last 200 years, the list is exhaustive, in fact. If you go through the list of famous saints and sages that have walked the planet, the list is exhaustive. But to name some others, Sri Aurobindo, Swami Chinmayananda, Swami Ramakrishna, Paramahamsa Yogananda, Swami Vivekananda, and of course Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who popularized meditation throughout the Western world with transcendental meditation. In the more contemporary period, the likes of Goenkaji and Vipassana meditation, the Brahma Kumaris, Sri Ravi Shankar and the Art of Living Foundation, Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev and the Isha Foundation have made meditation more accessible to the masses. So these days, in this day and age, meditation is pretty much a household term. 20, 30 years ago, if you said you were a meditator or you closed your eyes to meditate, people looked at you a little bit peculiarly. So in this day and age, meditation is very much mainstream. But what happened in the 60s and 70s, meditation was very much the domain of hippies and people who walked the alternative path of life. And meditation sort of got not so much a bad name, but it became associated more with that fringe group of society. But what's happened in modern days now, particularly with science, neuroscientists and scientists starting to research what actually happens during meditation, there is more and more compelling evidence that something is actually happening when people sit and the mind starts to quiet and meditation actually happens. And this is being validated through various scientific parameters such as ECG, EEG, MRI scans. I guess as a scientist and a doctor, I find that interesting, but as a meditator, I find it a bit boring because you know that it already works. So I guess when we're talking about meditation, it's quite important to define meditation, because what I think of as meditation might be something completely different to what someone else thinks of meditation. I'm sure many of you have heard the story about the 5 blind men who are trying to explain to each other what an elephant is like. And one touches the ear of the elephant and says it's a little bit like this. The other touches a tail and says it's long and it's stringy. And the other one touches a foot and says that there are nails that are hard. In the same way, when we describe meditation, people have different concepts and ideas of meditation. And meditation is a subjective experience. It's actually somewhat easier to talk about meditation in terms of what it isn't rather than what it is. It's not sitting for 20 minutes with eyes closed, although that can lead to meditation. It's not concentrating on the breath or concentrating on the mantra, though that can lead to meditation. It's something that actually happens. It can't be forced. A little bit like grass can't be made to grow. The actual experience, the subjective experience of meditation is something that has to happen. And the environment has to be created through various practices and disciplines in order for meditation to occur. So one of the ancient sages of the Indian time, sage Patanjali, describes this very, very beautifully. And he talks about the inner dimensions of the mind and consciousness with 3 terms. So one is dharana, one is dhyanam, and the other is samadhi. So dharana is like concentration. And if you use the analogy of the ocean and the waves and the turbulent waves, the waves are like the mind and the thoughts and the emotions, all very turbulent. Dharana is like sending a laser beam towards the depths of the ocean. A very focused, accurate, strong, powerful form of concentration. Dhyana or meditation is when that laser beam hits the bottom of the ocean and the laser beam actually comes into contact with something that is very deep and still. And samadhi, the complete state of union, which is considered the ultimate goal of yoga and meditation, nirvana, samadhi, moksha, similar terms to describe the same thing. Samadhi is when that space at the bottom of the ocean realizes that it is completely connected with all the other spaces at the depths of the ocean. So this is what we refer to when we actually talk about meditation. It's not so much the act of sitting, it's not the concentration on the breath or concentration on a mantra or a sound, but it's actually a deep inner experience. So we have a wonderful panel of speakers. I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I'd like to hand over to our panel and start to gain just some personal perspectives about meditation. We're all regular people doing regular jobs. We're not yogis who've hidden ourselves away from society and the community, but we're all busy people leading busy lives. And I'd like to start with Professor Rob Moody. He told me a little bit about how he first came into contact with meditation, which is a lovely story. So Rob, if you can just give us a few personal perspectives about how you came into meditation, what some of the experiences you've had, and how it's benefited you in your very busy life.
Thanks, Ranjit. I started, I became very interested in meditation after a quarter-life crisis. This was sort of precipitated by, and I wouldn't try this at home, by a extremely strong hash oil cigarette combined with a Lou Reed concert. This is not a good combination, I can tell you. In about my third or fourth year of medicine, I then happened to be going on an elective to Hong Kong and to India, and I passed through Gaya and then to Bodh Gaya, and happened to come across a whole lot of people that had just done one of the first Vipassana courses, in India, and I thought these were interesting people. They seem to sort of have got it all together. I might try this. I was sort of trying to look for myself. I sort of found someone. Anyway, a couple of years later, I actually did a 10-day meditation course at the end of my medical course, when it was sort of the province of hippies, I guess. And I must admit, after my first course, I thought, Nirvana just around the corner. After my second course, it's a bit further. Third course, it's a long way away. It's a bit like learning a language. The more you know there is to know. I practiced reasonably regularly, but it really took me a long time, in fact 20 years, to really work out this really benefited if I could do it every day, and which is sort of what I can do now. And in some ways, for me, I can have a sort of hectic life because I meditate. And for me, it's been a very important way of trying to make myself a better person. I must admit, at the time when I was, at university, I was so worried about what people thought of me. Like, I remember actually looking in the mirror and thinking, why am I so worried about what other people think of me? And someone had just said, the day before, had said something that had sort of triggered this and triggered my own sort of questions about my identity and who I was, and this constant sort of level of anxiety. And that's why I sort of got into it. I sort of wanted to, in a sense, be able to some way control better my reactions to other people and my relationships with other people. And that's what sort of meditation has been for me. In some ways, it's a wonderful way it gives me sort of hope and confidence, I guess, that I can cope with the ups and downs of life. It's certainly given me a way of trying to deal with my own ego, to become less egotistical, to become more generous, and just a way of, and it doesn't mean that I am, it just means that I'm better than I would have otherwise been. And that for me has been really important in building relationships with my family or with my friends, or coping with real ups and downs. And I've had some beauties, and public and sort of more private dramas. But when I had a major public one, then instead of hitting the bottle, I just sat on the cushion a bit harder. But there are ways of which we can look after ourselves. As a health professional, I think the fact that we need, just as we know we should be exercising for 30 minutes a day, I'm convinced that we should be training our mind every day as well. That's something that is yet to enter our public consciousness. I mean, if you ask people what the National Health and Medical Research Guidelines are for physical exercise, most people will have some idea. If you ask what are they for our mental health or our emotional health, people will obviously go, well, I don't know, because they don't exist. Why don't they exist? Why haven't we started to really understand and popularise and share with each other what ways we can do for looking after our emotional or our spiritual health? And the other reason why I meditate, I guess, is because it's really good for my work. It's really good to maintain a level of emotional balance. It's really good to maintain a level of sort of strategic overview. Whatever you're doing, if you can, in a sense, maintain balance, and I'm sure Tammy and will talk about the notion, you watch good sports people, they're balanced. And I've watched other people, good politicians, good artists, good people, they're pushed off, they come back. And meditation for me helps me come back. We can spend so much time worried in the past about what we might have done, or worried about what might happen. If you can turn that into active time of actually being in the moment, it's really efficient. So there's an efficiency dividend as well as an inner peace dividend, I think, for meditation. I mean, I will continue to make mistakes. This helps me make different ones. And in many ways, as I say, it gives me hope and confidence that I can gradually become the person that I would want to become.
So Rob, just from a practical perspective, you lead a busy life academically with University of Melbourne, travelling a lot of the world and involved in a number of organisations and institutions. From a practical perspective, how do you incorporate meditation in your life? Is it a set time that you meditate every day, or do you just slot it in when it happens, or...?
I do it in the morning, yeah. I should do it in the evening as well, but I don't quite sort of manage that bit. But I get up, have a shower, wake up, and then sit for half an hour. Other times I meditate. Planes is a really good time to meditate. Because it really helps you get over jet lag as well. But also you can do, mindfulness. I did some on the way here. Why? Or while I'm sitting here, because you get nervous. It's a really good way of coping with public speaking. There's lots of different times you can incorporate it. But for me, it's been, until I got to the stage where I could do it most mornings. That's when I really noticed it helped. And then it's a bit like exercise. When you stop doing it, I start to get a bit ratty. So that kicks. I'm sort of gently addicted to it.
So I know when I first started meditating 20 odd years ago, some of my friends used to ask me, is it actually different from just going for a run, relaxing, having a glass of wine? My father, who's sitting in the audience, first time I think I've spoken on meditation with Dad in the audience, his definition of meditation would be a Johnny Walker Black, and that's all you need. So I'd like to ask Suzanne just to talk a little bit about her experience mainly with transcendental meditation, and how it actually differs from just relaxation.
Thanks very much. I think the main thing to understand is that every experience changes our brain. And as we've heard, if you're doing something on a regular basis, then you're doing brain training. And what that means is that you're actually culturing your nervous system. You're culturing your brain so that it can sustain that style of activity that you're giving it the experience of during meditation, so that those benefits can be sustained out into the day, into the dynamism of what you're doing. And so rather than meditation being, when I started teaching TM 20 years ago, people would come in their lycra and think they were going to lie on the floor. Now they understand, because of the research that's been published, mainly on transcendental meditation specifically, people now know it's within the collective consciousness that meditation is good for us. So we know it's good for us, but we still have these misconceptions about what it really is. And meditation means to think. But when we're thinking, we're having a certain experience using the surface conscious active layer of the mind, the top of the ocean, as Ranjit was saying. And so when we're on the top of the ocean, when we're using that surface layer of the thinking layer of the mind in meaning, we're using concentration or we're using contemplation, then the mind is having a certain experience, usually of gamma waves or theta waves. When the mind settles down and experiences more refined, more settled, more delicate layers of the mind, then the mind becomes more coherent. And then the left and the right hemisphere and the anterior and the posterior lobe all start to work together, and we get some brain integration. What that means is that we expand the conscious capacity of the brain when we reduce the activity. But if we try and reduce the activity by just sitting and closing our eyes, then the result is not very profound. We're left sitting on the surface of the ocean. If we try and use one part of our brain to control another part of our brain, then if we're doing that with concentration or any faint idea, any trying to be relaxed even, then we're holding the mind in one place. And you know what? When you try and hold your mind still in one place, it'll run off and think about something else. And there's a lot of nodding going on. So the nature of the mind is not to stay still. It is not to be content with these surface active thinking layers of the mind. The mind wants to experience more delightment, more fulfillment, more reward, more expansion. And that's not available out through the senses into our everyday living life. But those more refined layers of our own awareness, more subtle Nearest to the finest is that infinite layer of our own creativity and intelligence and harmony and energy, and our mind wants to go there. But while we're on the surface using concentration, trying to hold the mind still, and then it wanders off, ice cream, TV, oh, back on the thing again. And then it wanders off again and we bring it back, we're going against the nature of the mind. So using concentration, it will improve your concentration, your focus, but it won't enable you to experience finer and finer layers of the mind and transcend. And when you have this experience of finer and finer and nearest to that finest, that infinite layer of expansion of the mind, then you get brain integration. Then you're doing brain training. Then you're actually switching on the frontal lobes and integrating the brain, bringing it online and giving it that experience of transcending thought. And then when you finish meditation and you get up and you go back out again into the day, your brain has actually physically changed in its structure. It's regrown so that you can think and act and behave and react in a way that uses more of your conscious capacity of the brain.